The 7 institutions of the European Union are seated in 4 different cities, viz. Brussels, Frankfurt, Luxembourg and Strasbourg, rather than being concentrated in a single capital city. The EU agencies and other bodies are located all across the Union, but usually not fixed in the treaties. The Hague is the only exception, as the fixed seat of the European Police Office. Over the years, Brussels has become the principal seat, with each major institution and now the European Council being based wholly or in part there, leading to it being popularly known as the capital of the EU. The seats have been a matter of political dispute since the states first failed to reach an agreement at the establishment of the European Coal and Steel Community in 1952. However, a final agreement between member states was reached in 1992, and later attached to the Treaty of Amsterdam. Despite this, the seat of the European Parliament remains controversial. The work of Parliament is divided between Brussels, Luxembourg and Strasbourg, which is seen as a problem due to the large number of MEPs, and documents which need to be moved. As the locations of the major seats have been enshrined in the treaties of the European Union, Parliament has no right to decide its own seat. Unlike other national parliaments, locating new bodies is also not without political disputes. The European Central Bank's seat had to symbolize its independence from political control, and was located in a city which did not already host a national government, a European institution. New agencies are also being based in Eastern Europe since 2004 to balance the distribution of agencies across the EU. Locations. The treaties of the European Union outline the locations of the following institutions. The European Parliament has its seat in Strasbourg, hosting 12 monthly plenary sessions. Brussels hosts additional sessions and committees. Luxembourg hosts the Secretariat of the European Parliament. The Council of the European Union has its seat in Brussels, except during April, June, and October, when meetings are held in Luxembourg. The European Commission also has its seat in Brussels, although some departments are hosted by Luxembourg. The European Court of Justice, the General Court, and the Court of Auditors are based in Luxembourg, along with the European Investment Bank. The Economic and Social Committee and the Committee of the Regions are entirely based in Brussels, while the European Central Bank is based in Frankfurt, and Europol is the only agency to have its seat fixed by the treaties, in The Hague. Separately, the Treaty of Nice establishes Brussels as the venue for all formal summits of the European Council after 2004. However, some extraordinary sessions are sometimes held outside the city. The European Council's seat is, however, fixed by a declaration rather than a protocol, meaning it is less binding than the other seats. The 2011 treaty establishing the European Stability Mechanism states that the seat of the ESM must be in Luxembourg. The ESM should be ratified and active in mid-2013, and it is allowed to establish liaison office in Brussels. Non-fixed seats. There are numerous other bodies and agencies that have not had their seats fixed by treaties. Brussels hosts the European Defence Agency. Luxembourg hosts the Translation Centre for the bodies of the European Union and a European Investment Bank. Strasbourg hosts the Office of the European Ombudsman. The other agencies are spread across Europe, and since the 2004 enlargement, there has been a drive to locate more agencies in the new member states to make a more equal distribution. However, some problems have been encountered with basing agencies in the eastern states. For example, Frontex, the new border agency, has had problems recruiting skilled experts because many do not want to live in the agency host city, Warsaw, due to its relatively low wages and standard of living. In addition, Plans to place the headquarters of Galileo in Prague met with opposition over security concerns that the city would not be safe enough for such a sensitive agency. Commission departments. Although the Commission is mainly based in Brussels, some of its departments are required to be based in Luxembourg since the 1965 agreement, which listed the following for Luxembourg: ECSC Financial Departments, the DG for Credit and Investments, the department which collects the ECSC levy and attached accounts departments, the Publications Office with related sales and proofreading services, and CORDIS, the EEC Statistical Office and Data Processing Department, the EEC and ECSC departments for Hygiene and Industrial Safety, DG4, Health, DG for Euratom Safeguards and any appropriate administrative and technical infrastructure for these. As departments have changed over the years, some are no longer present as they have been abolished or merged, with most departments present being mainly based in Brussels while retaining a minor presence in Luxembourg. There are however some departments which are still entirely based in the city by the 1965 agreement. Capital. The treaties or declarations of the EU have not declared any city as the capital of the EU in any form. However, informally the term has found usage despite connotations out of step with the normal perceptions surrounding an supranational entity. Brussels is frequently the subject of the label, particularly in publications by local authorities, the Commission and press. Indeed, Brussels interprets the 1992 Agreement on Seats as declaring Brussels as a capital. Likewise, authorities in Strasbourg and organizations based there refer to Strasbourg as the capital of Europe and Brussels. Strasbourg and Luxembourg are also referred to as the joint capitals of Europe, for example in relation to the Eurocap Rail project, a railway that would link the three European capitals. History. At the founding of the European Coal and Steel Community, the states could not agree which city should host the institutions of the new community. Brussels was widely preferred, but was vetoed by Belgium, which insisted on Liège. Because of the impasse, Luxembourg was chosen as a provisional choice for all but the Assembly, which was to be based in Strasbourg. Two further communities were created in 1957, and again a provisional agreement laid out that the Assembly would meet in Strasbourg, the courts would meet in Luxembourg, and the commissions and councils would be split between Luxembourg and Brussels. These institutions later started to be concentrated in the latter city. As various agreements were reached, activities in Luxembourg gradually shifted to Brussels, and the Parliament, although bound to remain in Strasbourg, also started to work in Brussels while the courts remained in Luxembourg. The final agreement in 1992 set up the present arrangement, including the division of the Parliament's work between the three cities. In 2002, the European Council, having previously rotated between different cities, decided to base itself in Brussels. Beginning, the ECSC was founded by the Treaty of Paris in 1951. However, there was no decision on where to base the institutions of the new community. The treaties allowed for the seat to be decided by common accord of governments, and at a conference of the ECSC members on the 23rd of July 1952 no permanent seat was decided. The seat was contested with Liège, Luxembourg, Strasbourg and Turin all considered. While Ssolbergj had a status as a European city, the ongoing dispute over Saarland made it a problematic choice. Brussels would have been accepted at the time, but divisions within the then unstable Belgian government ruled that option out. To break the deadlock, Joseph Beck, then Prime Minister of Luxembourg, proposed that Luxembourg be made the provisional seat of the institutions until a permanent agreement was reached. In 1958, after the Treaty of Rome came into effect, the new members of the community had to again decide on a seat. In early 1958 they could not come to a conclusion, and various cities began to lobby for the position. It was decided that, in principle, all of the institutions should be located in one city as soon as feasible. Brussels, Strasbourg, Luxembourg, Turin, Milan, Stresa, Paris, Nice, and the French department of Oise were all considered by the European Committee of Town Planning experts in a report to the Council of Ministers. However, even after the presentation of the report, the countries could not agree, and in June 1959 a three-year moratorium on the decision was set. The delay helped Brussels establish itself as the seat, since it was already functioning as much of the administration was already working there in office space loaned from the Belgian government. During this time, Belgique, Germany, the Netherlands, and the European institutions themselves favored Brussels. Luxembourg wanted to maintain the seat of the ECSC, France supported Strasbourg, and Italy continued to promote Milan. However, it was decided that the Common Assembly, which became the Parliament, should instead be based in Strasbourg. The Council of Europe was already based there, in the House of Europe. The chamber of the COS Parliamentary Assembly could also serve the Common Assembly, and they did so until 1999, when a new complex of buildings was built across the river from the palace. Provisional Agreement. The creation in 1957 of the European Economic Community and a European Atomic Energy Community created new duplicate institutions to the ECSC. On 7 January 1958, it was decided that Brussels, Luxembourg, and Strasbourg would again be provisional venues until a final decision. Strasbourg would retain the Assembly, Luxembourg the court, and both Brussels and Luxembourg would host meetings of the councils and commissions. The discretion of the exact meeting place of the new councils was given to the president of the council. In practice, this was to be in the Chateau of Val-Duchess until the autumn of 1958, at which point it would move to 2 Rue Ravensteinstraat in Brussels. Meanwhile, the ECSC Council was still based in Luxembourg, holding its meetings in the Circle Municipal on Place d'Armes. Its secretariat moved within the city on numerous occasions, but between 1955 and 1967, it was housed in the Valois-Rencost district. On 21 June 1958, the Parliamentary Assembly recommended to the Council that the Assembly should have its seat in the same place where the other organizations are based, although it accepted that plenary sessions could be held elsewhere. The Assembly also nominated 3 cities to be the seat of the institutions. However, no permanent agreement was reached. The provisional arrangement was reiterated on 8 April 1965 with the decision on the provisional location of certain institutions and departments of the communities. This was following the merger treaty, which combined the executives of the 3 communities into a single institutional structure. However, with the merged executives, the Commission and most departments were grouped together in Brussels, rather than Luxembourg. The Commission was first based on Avenue de la Joyeuse in Trèves in Compsalon, before moving to the Bradel building on the Schumann roundabout, and then its present location in the Berlaymont building. The ECSC Secretariat moved from Luxembourg to the merged Body Council Secretariat in the Ravenstein building of Brussels. In 1971 the Council and its Secretariat moved into the Charlemagne building, next to the Commission's Berlaymont. These premises rapidly proved insufficient, and the administrative branch of the Secretariat moved to a building at 76 Rue Joseph II Straat. During the 1980s the language divisions moved out into the Nervians, Frère Aubin and Guimard, state-of-the-art buildings. To compensate Luxembourg for the loss of the Commission and Council, a number of provisions were laid out. Firstly, the Court of Justice would remain in the city. Some departments of the Commission and the Assembly, including the Secretariat of the Assembly, would remain along with the European Investment Bank. The Council would also have to hold sessions in Luxembourg during April, June and October. It also confirmed Strasbourg as the seat of the Parliament, with the prioritization of Luxembourg for future institutions. In 1977, the Court of Auditors became provisionally located in Luxembourg. Edinburgh Agreement. Despite the 1965 agreement, the Parliament seat remained a source of contention. Wishing to be closer to the activities in Brussels and Luxembourg, a few plenary sessions were held by the Parliament between 1967 and 1981 in Luxembourg instead of Strasbourg, against the wishes of France, and in 1981 it returned to holding sessions entirely in Strasbourg. In the previous year it unsuccessfully issued an ultimatum to the national governments, attempting to force them to reach an agreement. Thus, the Parliament moved some of its decision-making bodies to Brussels, along with its committee and political group meetings. And in 1985 it also built a plenary chamber in Brussels for some part sessions. All the Parliament's attempts in this field were challenged by member states. In response, the European Council adopted on the 12th of December 1992 in Edinburgh a final agreement on the seats. The decision on the location of the seats of the institutions and of certain bodies and departments of the European Communities outlined that the Parliament would be based in Strasbourg, where it would be obliged to hold 12 periods of monthly plenary sessions, including the budget session. However, additional sessions could be held in Brussels, which is where committees also should have met, while the Secretariat had to remain in Luxembourg. It also provided for the Court of First Instance to be based in Luxembourg with the Court of Justice, which remained there. However, this agreement dropped the provision from the 1965 decision, which gave priority to Luxembourg for any new judicial and financial bodies. In response, Luxembourg attached a unilateral declaration stating it did not renounce this article. However, they did renounce any claim to the seat of the judicial boards of appeal of the Office for Harmonization in the Internal Market via the Treaty of Nice. The Parliament challenged this decision, splitting the working arrangements, declaring that the division of its activities between three states was against the treaties and the natural prerogatives of a Parliament elected by direct universal suffrage, claiming the right to decide its own workings to its own efficiency. In response, leaders annexed the decision to the Treaty of Amsterdam, including it in the treaties. Central Bank. A Council decision on the 29th of October 1993 on the location of European agencies established that the European Monetary Institute, later the European Central Bank, would be based in Frankfurt. Frankfurt had to compete with numerous other cities, including London, Paris, Amsterdam, Luxembourg, Lyon, Barcelona and even Basel. France even linked the issue of the seat to the ongoing dispute regarding the seat of the European Parliament. Frankfurt was criticized as symbolizing German dominance, although the Deutsche Bundesbank had effectively been running the community's currencies for the previous years, while Luxembourg has a banking tradition that wasn't so careful. London was discredited because the UK remained outside the Eurozone. It was also seen as important to locate the bank in a city not already hosting a national government or EU institution, in order to emphasize its independence. Others, such as the former head of the Bundesbank Karl Otto Pohl, favored a small country with a stable currency. The advantages of hosting the bank were also in dispute by some economists, while there was seen by some as little to gain in terms of attracting other banks and financial institutions. Others saw it as affecting which cities would be financial hubs in the years to come. Recent history. During 1995, the Council of the European Union moved into the Justus Lipsius building in Brussels, now also the home of the European Council, during the refurbishment of the Parliament to remove asbestos. However, its staff was still increasing, so it continued to rent Frere Orban building to house the Finnish and Swedish language divisions. Later it started to rent further buildings in Brussels. The Parliament refurbishment project overran, but in 2004, the Commission moved back in and the Barroso Commission concentrated its activities there, with the President and meeting room on the 13th floor. As of 2007, the Commission occupies 865,000 square meters in 61 buildings across the Brussels EU district. Due to the 2004 and 2007 member enlargements, staff has risen, demanding an extra 35,000 square meters of office space. This may lead to further construction and high-rise buildings. Furthermore, a building next to Justus Lipsius, Residence Palace, is currently being renovated as the future seat of the Council and European Council from 2013. In 2002, it was also decided that the European Council would be based in Brussels. The Council was established in the 1960s as an informal gathering of national leaders and did not have a fixed location, being held, instead, in the state which held the EU presidency each time. However, with impending enlargement, the Treaty of Nice established that one council meeting per presidency would be held in Brussels. After enlargement to 18 members, all business would be held there with the exception of some extraordinary meetings that are still held elsewhere. In Brussels, the European Council shares the same building as the Council of the European Union. In 2007, the new situation became a source of contention, with the European Council wanting to sign the Treaty of Lisbon in Lisbon. The Belgian government, keen not to set a precedent, insisted that the actual meeting should take place in Brussels as usual. This meant that after the signing, photo shoot and formal dinner, the entire summit transferred from Lisbon to Brussels to continue with normal business. The idea, mirrored with the travelling circus of the European Parliament, garnered protests from environmental groups describing the hypocrisy of demanding lower carbon emissions while flying across Europe for the same, somewhat for political reasons. The European Parliament seat remained an issue throughout this period, despite the Council writing it into the treaties. During the 1990s, the issue was debated every year, and in 1999, 250 MEPs signed a letter condemning the arrangement and the Strasbourg facilities. The following year, Parliament voted 401 to 77 for a resolution demanding the right to decide its own working locations. Attempts to include this in the following treaties in 2000 and 2007 both failed. However, in September 2008, Parliament held its first full plenary session in Brussels after the ceiling of the Strasbourg chamber collapsed during recess, forcing the temporary move.